evening and welcome to the Cover1 Buffalo podcast. I am your host, Greg Thompson, joined and finally reunited with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Welcome back, brother. How are things going?
Reunited and it feels so good, right?
I almost sang to you, but I wasn't vocally warmed up for it.
That's all right. No, it does feel good to come back and celebrate a victory with you. So you're welcome. For one, that we got a victory. But no, it feels great, man. 2 in a row. Who would have thought?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Before we get into all the fun for tonight, I want to just talk a little bit about what we have going on over at Cover1. Just a lot of fantastic content coming out. Fernando already has the 4 up, 4 down after the game getting ready. Some great comparisons for Josh Allen that I'm sure Aaron and I are going to get into in great detail coming up here, but a lot of great things going on there. I know before we got these 2 wins, a lot of people were already fully focused on the draft. Russell and Christian have it locked down, ready with all kinds of good stuff going over there. And then obviously, Aaron and I are here for you guys twice a week going over previews. I was able to talk to Zach Goodall, with the Lockdown Jags earlier this week, preview the game a little bit, doing our post game now, and we're going to keep bringing you those here every week. But my favorite is for our premium members. And Aaron, what's your favorite part about being a premium member with Cover1?
For me, it's definitely the Slack channel during the game, especially, and right before leading up to the game. I was out getting my Christmas tree today, and I just kept checking the Slack channel to see kind of what was going on. I can't always just be on Twitter just because I get sucked into an argument. I don't have time always to defend my views and argue things. So the Slack channel is nice because it's not that type of mentality, and you just get good conversation. During the game, it's absolutely fantastic. It feels like I'm at the bar with a group of friends watching my favorite team, and I can communicate with those guys where I used to really just not like being on Twitter during the game because of all the negativity and all this, everybody attacking each other. And this is totally different. And for me, that's just my favorite part of the whole Cover1 community.
Yeah, I agree. It's really been fantastic just to be able to get in there and talk a little bit about what we have going on and not to get into those rat holes that you get into on social media. And I know we're going to talk about one of them in a bit with some of the box score scouting, but having a group of people on the premium channel Slack that are, in tune with what the organization's doing. They're aware of what the strategy is. They know, how to compartmentalize and look at what's good for today, but what we need long term, and we still get into some heated, healthy debates. There's still a lot of good discussion and argument and all the things you look for that back and forth dialogue on social media, but it's with people that actually know what they're talking about, and it's a really good feeling. So I welcome you guys. I know we had a special going on through maybe the end of the day today for $10. Normally it's $25 to come in, and we actually might have some stuff coming up with some Cover1 swag. Speaking of which, we're going to have one today for some of our active members. If you're in there in the live chat on Spreaker.com asking us some questions, we're going to be giving out a Cover1 shirt today to one of our active and engaged listeners. So something exciting and an incentive for those of you who listen to this on your commute Monday morning, a reason to jump online with us live and give us some of those questions. While we're getting ready to jump right into things here, let's start out with gruntled and disgruntled. As Aaron's, painfully aware, this is just an excuse for me to say the word gruntled. But with all the attention that came into a game like today, there was a lot of ups and downs. Where did your thoughts start, Aaron? Who were your first awards to give out?
Yeah, so this was a hard one. I was driving around after the game a little bit and thinking about it because there was a lot to be excited about on the gruntled version. Obviously, I think one of the low-hanging fruit would be Josh Allen coming back and playing well. Obviously, like you said, and I think we'll talk about it later, the stat line gurus are probably going to pick him apart. But from what the eye test that I saw and what the plays that I saw that were left on the field, not due to him, just due to the lack of skills, I think that was one. But for me, what really stood out on a number of plays, and some of those plays got called back, and that, again, that's something here we'll talk about in a second, was Kyle Williams, man. Just I felt like he was my gruntled of the day. When we needed a big play on third down, he was getting penetration, getting other sacks. He got 1.5 sacks himself, and they weren't just 1st and 10 sacks. These were 3rd and 8s, things like that, where we needed to stop. Kyle Williams was the guy coming up with his fist in the air. And that was a big part about this game, stopping the Jaguars when they needed to get the ball back. And to me, Kyle's he's timeless, man. Every time I think that the guy is aging and won't be able to continue to do it, he just keeps doing it, man.
Yeah, it's incredible, and there, like you said, there might even be a game where we don't see a ton of impact from him, and then he has one like today where he just reminds you how incredibly valuable he is, and in my mind, reminds you that hopefully he's got more than just this year in him. So I'm certainly hopeful that that's what we see going forward, and I think that's a great selection.
Yeah. What about you, man? Where are you on the gruntled?
I'm absolutely going to cop out, and it's going to be Josh Allen. Although I will give a 10% of my award to Brian Dable. I do think that there were some really creative play calls today. We had a really nice jet motion play action screen that went back to Shady, and then right after that was the crazy play where they brought Isaiah McKenzie in jet motion, stopped him at the wing, and then ran a jet motion sweep reverse back the other way that he scored a touchdown on. So, I mean, that's just incredible.
Beautiful play.
To be able to pull something like that together. And when you have the kind of situation that we do here with, not the greatest talent, that's what a lot of people have been asking is, do we have reason to be optimistic in what we're looking for next year? And is Dable the guy to lead this? And I think that gives you a glimmer of hope that when we do bring the right talent in here, he can be that guy. Before we get into, I know the offense is going to center a lot around Josh, so I won't go over a lot of that from an award standpoint. But
well, did we get our disgruntled?
Where were you on the disgruntled?
The referees. I think that was the easy one for me today. Obviously, there's players and things that happen throughout the game, but the refs, just the slowing down of the game, because it was actually a pretty exciting game, even as sloppy as it got at times. But the refs really killed it. They killed momentum. I think there was a lot of sloppy play that led to the total overall amount of penalties that we saw. But the refs didn't help that. I would say probably 50% of that was on the refs, just calling ticky-tack stuff that you just don't need to call in a really close physical game like it was. I think the game would have just flowed much better. And I think that's what the NFL wants, is a game that flows for the fans. I felt like they just really took the air out of the game on a number of occasions. And when you have to talk about the refs, I'm not one of those guys that likes to come in and blame the refs for a loss or point fingers at the refs. So if I'm talking about the refs, then that it was a pretty big problem in the game and messing with the flow.
Absolutely, and it was terrible in both directions. I would say early on, the Bills were getting jobbed, and it was terrible. But later on, we actually got some pretty favorable ticky-tack calls that went against the Jags. Yeah. And just the fact that there were so many bad calls that we even acknowledged that it went both directions. 23 penalties for 170 yards is ridiculous. So 10 for 90 for the Jags, 13 for 80 yards for the Bills. Both teams ended up with, there were 10 total first downs picked up from penalty. The Jags got 6 first downs off penalties. The Bills got 4 off penalty. That's just ridiculous to be able to have that much impact in a game that, was as close as what it was. It just, takes away from the enjoyment of the game. So I think that's a great call. I probably would have gone the same direction. So I'm going to mention that some of my frustration is, I guess it's going to be Leslie Frazier. And it's hard because I realize a lot of the positive from our defense is letting the defensive linemen penetrate and, break things up in the backfield. But we had 2 or 3 drives in a row where, they were just gashing us on run plays and never made any adjustments, never made any changes, let it go all the way through those last 3 drives. We almost gave up. I know you made a comment in the premium channel Slack, until we got lucky on that tipped interception. It looked like they were going to run the ball into a field goal, in their 2-minute drill, just running the ball. So just having the fact that we let them gash us like that, other teams are going to notice that. Other teams are going to, take note of the ability to do that. And it's something that we need to make sure that we tighten up, because a lot of that was happening on inside traps because they were letting the D-line penetrate, pushing them out of the way, and then hitting it up inside where then there was nobody there and linemen left to get onto Milano and Edmonds. And, they were obviously just clipping away 8, 9, 10, 11 yards each time. And that was getting frustrating. Obviously, it was fantastic they got that turned around in the second half, but that was certainly a frustration early on.
Super frustrating, man. That's one of the most difficult things to watch, is a team impose their will against your team on the ground. Like the passing game, you can give up the chunk plays and things like that. That kind of thing happens. But when a team for an entire half of football imposes their will, and like you mentioned my comment of I was going to almost vomit if they got into field goal position running the ball. You just don't see it. It should never happen in those positions. You really got to tighten it up. Luckily for us, obviously Leonard Fournette goes out after being ejected because he was totally unstoppable. And I don't know if they would have come up with something to stop him. They were, like you said, I think they were using a bit of aggression at the front four against us, which is never good. And the fact that the Bills weren't able to make the in-game adjustment at the time, I don't know. I'll have to go back and watch, but I don't really know that the adjustments that the Bills made were the factor, more that Hackett had to change the way he was calling the game because Fournette wasn't in. I think if Fournette was in and they were still able to keep doing what they're doing, I don't know if the Bills make that change to actually stop it. I would have been interested to see how a second half, third quarter, fourth quarter would have been with Fournette and if Frazier McDermott would have made the correct changes to kind of slow that down because he was just gashing us, and that's hard to beat a team that's doing that.
Yeah, and we'll certainly get into more of that with the defense. But let's start on the offensive side of the ball. Looking at it, I know you and I talked about it as we were kind of prepping for the show here. The box score scouts are going to have a field day because, Josh Allen was under 50% passing and 160 yards. He can't be any good. Tell me why that's nonsense.
I'll take it every time. I'm not even gonna lie. If that's what it takes to get a win, and Jacksonville is 3-8, but the defense is still good. Let's not kid ourselves. They still have a good defense. They have top talent across the board on this defense. So they went up against a good defense. They put up numbers and they put up points. So anytime you can do that, I really don't care what the box score says at the end of the day. And he did a lot with his legs. He got 100 yards, over 100 yards on the ground, and kept the ball moving. Had that huge run where we thought he was going to stiff arm one of the safeties. I forget who.
Yeah, Barry Church. He was going to embarrass Barry Church, and Church just went under the stiff arm to take out his legs, but he was about to get stiff armed into internet infamy.
Yeah, by a quarterback, and he's got that stiff arm, so the legs add to it, so you get that additional yardage. Like we said, though, he could have easily, I think, had a 250-yard game if he had to throw a few more times. Obviously, his receivers didn't do him a ton of favors. I think we counted 2 drops, but there was more left on the field. I think that wasn't Josh Allen's fault, and the stat line could have looked better for him. But coming off how many weeks was he out with that arm injury? I have nothing but praise for the kid coming off of that, getting back into it, and I can't wait to see the rest of this development for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, let me start by being even-handed. He was not perfect. There were throws that got away from him. He had a nasty throw on an attempted screen to Isaiah McKenzie that he bounced at his feet. He had a third down pass off to the left sideline that was way off target.
Had the guy wide open.
There were 3 plays that I put directly on him that were just bad throws. I also had what I thought was his best game as a pro. He had, I counted, like you said, two terrible drops. The one, Deontay Thompson, on a huge pickup that would have been an awesome pickup on 3rd and long that was directly in Deontay Thompson's hands and just couldn't hold on to it and let the safety knock it out of his hands. Another drop that came up on, I think it was on Kroom. And then 3 huge conversions that got called back by penalty. He picked up third and 5, got pulled back to 3rd and 15, got pulled back another one, converted all of them, and just kept getting called back further and further into it.
Russell Bodine there helping us.
Oh God, I can't wait to replace him. But overall, Josh Allen picked up 4 first downs with his legs, plus a touchdown that was on an awesome called run where he put his shoulder down and knocked Myles Jack into the end zone. And then spread it around, got completions to 5 different receivers, didn't have anyone with more than 4 targets, spread the love around, but very easily, if some of those penalties don't get called, if he gets 1 or 2 of those drops, he did have 2 throwaways that were on, nobody was open, made the smart play and threw it away, but those weren't bad throws. His stat line very easily could have been, say 13 to 22 for 250 yards, and that would have been the exact same game that he had here. But you talk about 99 yards on the ground, he was over 100. Then the couple kneel downs at the end brought it back below. But that's a Bills record. We had Tyrod Taylor as our starting quarterback for 3 years. Josh Allen just set the team record for most rushing yards by a quarterback. That was the most ever, 99. I think the second Taylor's record was 76 in a game. Yeah. So just everything that he brought together, I thought it was his best game as a pro.
No, absolutely. And the throw to Foster, that 75-yard bomb, was the play of the
Ooh.
season so
Oh.
far. And the thing that really stood out on that throw to me, it was a professional football throw. He stood in the pocket tall because he's a big guy, and he got crushed from three different angles when you
I
watch
don't
the.
understand the physics of how he got the
Yeah.
throw off.
Yeah, and that ball just rocketed out of his arm, leading his receiver. Obviously, Foster had to make a great catch, and he did. And we'll get into him in a little bit in his development here from the summer till now. But he makes a great catch. But the ball was very catchable. The ball was in reach for him. It was not a bad throw. It was accurate. And that, to me, that's where I think all these NFL scouts and people that had him high up on boards saw that arm talent, that ability to stand tall in the pocket and make those plays. And if you can just have some consistency in that, man, that's special. Watching that throw, I was like, man, this kid has something special. The thing, like you said, though, that 3rd and 8 really stands out to me. Him missing that is that intermediate stuff and the consistent stuff. The wow plays clearly are there. We're seeing them, and hopefully we see him throughout the rest of the season, but it's the stuff where you need to pick up that 3rd and 8 and he just misses a guy 6 yards to the left. You gotta bring it all together, and I think that's what we all want to see.
Yeah, and we'll get into it more as we have plenty of time to fill in the off season. But having every single snap as a starter, all the mini camps, all the training camp, all the preseason games, he's going to have every single rep with the receivers coming in. And one thing that's going to take us into probably our next segment here is I read from Chris Brown, the only receiver that stayed back with Josh Allen over the holiday and over the bye week to get extra reps in was Robert Foster. Mm-hmm. And I just think that that's a growing connection on a guy that I probably wasn't even that sure was going to make the roster. And that now to be in this position where 2 weeks in a row he goes for over 100 yards and now 94 yards, every single one being a big play, major air, air yards kind of attack. It's kind of nice to see that he might have a little something here, and maybe he does hang on the roster next year.
Yeah, and a really cool story so far, obviously. An undrafted guy, all the potential in the world coming out of high school, kind of that typical story you hear about a top-rated prospect, goes to college, goes to one of the biggest school in the world, kind of just falls on the depth chart, doesn't get real going in college, becomes undrafted. Luckily, Dable was there with him. Kind of just hangs around the Bills all summer, right? He never really wowed this summer. They tried to get him going, never really wowed. He somehow sticks on this roster, gets cut at some point this year. He voiced his frustration. They bring him back. Since they brought him back, he's contributed at a really good level. Probably the only explosive player outside of when we brought in McKenzie here, but real explosive receiver they have, and he's really shown it off. So this could be a really interesting story. And I know the rumor out there on Twitter is that this front office cannot evaluate any type of offensive talent, but this would be a nice trophy on their mantle if he turns into anything, even if it's that 4th receiver in the depth chart next year when they bring in some talent. If Robert Foster can make a big play here and there and be a nice piece on a cheap rookie contract that you control, I'm all for it, man. I do feel bad. I think he got his bell rung. I'm guessing he is not going to be playing in the next week. That could be a pretty big concussion that he received. I don't know if we saw anything post game.
I agree completely. I was thinking the same thing. He was back in the game after that.
Was he? So, I didn't even see him.
Now, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be anything from the trainers after the game.
Sure.
But he was back in the game.
He did get back in. Wow. That's something to keep an eye on, man, because he looked concussed to me. He was on his knee. He looked dizzy. I don't know. I'd be really shocked if he didn't have a concussion. But, hey, you never know. But that catch, obviously we don't like to see the helmet to the head hits, and they did call the flag, and that's great. But the impressive thing is that he held onto that ball. He made a nice catch on the ball. The guy was coming. He knew he had to have heard the footsteps, and he hung on to the ball and made a great play. And that was kind of the thing that we didn't know if he could do. And then obviously on the 75-yard touchdown, again, just plucked it out of the air, making a great play, something that he wasn't able to do during the preseason. We saw him open downfield, dropped a few, missed a few, didn't finish routes. Seems like he learned that lesson a little bit. I'm not going to put the cart before the horse here, but it could be a really special thing that, and I think a really important thing that the Bills front office can hang on their trophy case if he turns into anything at all.
No, I think you're exactly spot on. I think that the combination of what we have, we know we need some wide receiver talent brought in, whether that's a wide receiver one through free agency or the draft. I think that now what you're seeing is there's a good chance that we put together what is a reasonable back end of a receiving core. I think that it's very likely Zay Jones is that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 kind of big slot guy. Robert Foster could be the deep threat when you're in 4 wide sets, and Isaiah McKenzie can be that 5th wide receiver that's there for special teams, kick return, punt return, and the gadget plays that we saw today with, again, 2 nice carries, including one for a touchdown. He did get one nice catch that was actually a very nice catch for a third down conversion, and they tried to go to him again with a wide receiver screen. So on fairly limited snaps, again, he got 3 touches with 4 attempted touches, and being able to put that together, it looks like maybe we have the back end of a wide receiver core coming together.
I definitely agree, and it's going to make their job a lot easier this offseason if they don't have to bring in 3 wide receivers, if they could only focus on, landing a big guy and maybe another supplemental number 2 receiver versus having to totally bring in a whole new wide receiver room, which is what I think a lot of us thought a month ago, 6 weeks ago. I thought that maybe we would have to bring in 4 wide receivers next year to try to compete, and you're not going to do it. You're not going to hit on all those guys. So I think now, if these guys have any ability like they're showing that they might have, if you're able to keep McKenzie, Foster, and Zay Jones, and you have those 3 guys, then it gives you a little flexibility. You don't have to reach in the draft for that talent. Maybe you overpay for one guy in free agency, and then you take a guy late in the draft, and then you have a nice complete wide receiver room. If they could be a 5 deep wide receiver room going into the summer next year, I'm going to be ecstatic from where they were going into last summer. In a 1-year turnaround, if you can go from what they had to 5 decent wide receivers and get Josh Allen some weapons, I'm going to be a very happy man.
Absolutely, and I think that it's exciting to see that come together. And one more piece on the offensive side of the ball that we haven't gotten to yet, Josh Allen wasn't sacked today. And with an incredible defense that I think on paper still is the most talented defense in the NFL, that's incredible. That I think the makeshift line that we've pulled together, you had another nice guy. I saw Wyatt Teller multiple times in a position to, be able to kind of finish a block, and we didn't see any huge whiffs or miscommunications or anything like that. And to be able to have a game where, we ran the ball 35 times for 167 yards, 4.8 yards a carry, 2 rushing touchdowns, and no sacks given up. That's as good as you're going to get for a makeshift line like we have.
Yeah, it's good to see. Obviously, there's still some concern. I think when we go back and watch, and I'm interested to see what Eric comes up with on his watch. I think Josh Allen helped those guys out a number of times, bailing out. I saw a few times where he stiff-armed his way out of a sack. So I don't know that the fact that they didn't give up any sacks was all on them. I think Josh Allen's a tough guy to sack, and he has the ability to get out of the pocket when things break down. But also, to kind of devil's advocate myself, he adds some extra stress on that offensive line because he holds on the ball a little longer. I bet that the PFF, how long to throw is going to be pretty high. Josh Allen had quite a bit of time back there. So definitely good to see that. I was worried about that going into this game. We saw it a few times already with Josh Allen, and then with Derek Anderson, the quarterback just getting crushed. Things seem to be improving there. I hope that it's not improving enough to continue to hold on to Juan Castillo. Is my only concern.
Yeah, we'll see where that goes. I think that some of the development we've seen, it depends on, I guess we're going to have to trust Dable, or trust, both Dable and McDermott, that they're able to determine is development from Wyatt Teller because of Castillo, or is the continued, degradation of Vlad Ducasse and Russell Bodine and John Miller, is that because of Castillo? So, I would like to see a new offensive line coach. But yeah, we'll see. If there's a lot more games like this today, maybe that does save him and hold on.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting thing to see how that plays out, right? Because at the end of the year, when they go through the tape and they evaluate the team, like you said, I think it's no surprise around the league. This is a very makeshift unit. And if as the year goes on, there's a lot of progression. I think that's a hard conversation, and we know Sean McDermott's a guy that is loyal to a fault, maybe. And it's an easy decision if there's regression and guys are just getting worse. But if there's progression throughout the year and you got some young guys and things are looking good, I think that's a tough conversation for those guys to have. And it will be interesting to see how he and Daboll work that out.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. I know that we've both been calling for a handful of coaches here and there, and I'd like to see somebody new, a new voice in the quarterback room. I'd like to see Daboll pick that guy, to have a guy that's really in lockstep with him, and that he picks one of his guys to be in Allen's ear, to be able to kind of further his maturation and development. I'd kind of wanted the same thing for Castillo, and then we'll talk about our favorite position coach here in a little bit. Anything else on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, on the wide receivers too, I saw a couple things in the chat, and I saw it on Twitter a little bit about Zay Jones not getting any targets. And one guy commented, why did with Barkley Zay Jones look like a real number two? One, they were playing against the New York Jets, so I think everybody looked a little bit better. Again, we were playing against the Jaguars. They are a good team. There's a lot of talent there. I think they were just trying to find the open guy and spread the ball versus forcing it to anybody in particular. And I don't know that Zay and Josh Allen have that rapport yet, and that's something that they have to build. Obviously, Zay missed a lot of time this summer. With Barkley, you kind of throw all that out the window because he's just throwing to whoever he can see, right? He doesn't have rapport with anybody. So it's an even playing ground where we know that Josh Allen and Foster, you mentioned it, Foster stayed back. They worked a lot together this summer. So there's some confidence there. That's going to be there naturally. He's going to force the ball to Kelvin Benjamin a few times. We know that's going to happen. So I wouldn't look into Zay not getting anything on the stat line today. But what Zay did do today, you mentioned that Isaiah McKenzie jet sweep. Go back and watch that and watch what Zay Jones does. And those are the kind of guys I want on my team, is even when they're not getting targets, they're putting their helmet down and they're blocking. And he destroyed the defender on that play.
It was Jalen Ramsey too.
It was Jalen Ramsey.
Yes,
that's right.
It was.
And you need that extra stuff out of a guy. It's what we got out of Robert Woods. Even when Robert Woods wasn't having productive games, he would still be a great blocker in the run game. And I think people forget that. There's more to receiving than just bringing in targets and getting yards. And for him to just keep his head in the game, and when he needed to be called, he was called and helped the offense. That's big to me, and I think the coaches will see that too.
This is very simple. This had nothing to do with Zay Jones or Kelvin Benjamin. This had everything to do with Jalen Ramsey and AJ Boye. They have the best cornerback duo in the NFL. You don't mess with that. The deep bomb to Robert Foster was on a poor handoff to Barry Church. The bomb that we got there and the long plays that we got were because of that. The one play that we got, that Kelvin Benjamin got, he was reasonably open there and fought for the ball, and they still almost knocked it out of his hands as they were, fighting for it. I thought it was actually one of Benjamin's best, effort plays of the season. Him fighting for the ball, and then fought for extra yards afterwards. But that's very much Daboll that decided not to go to Zay Jones and to Kelvin Benjamin, because it doesn't make sense. There's a reason we only threw the ball 19 times. They have an incredible pass defense with a great defensive line. There's a reason that we did that. There was a reason that we saw called quarterback runs in some of those plays. You don't tempt that and put Josh Allen, still a rookie quarterback, in a position where, hey, I need you to go beat AJ Boye and Jalen Ramsey with precision passing. Right. It's just that it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, and I think you can look at Shady's day too, and why didn't he have the day he did against the Jets? Again, I don't like downgrading a team, but it was against the Jets, not the Jaguars. Totally different teams, totally different defenses. And this goes back to the point I was making kind of all summer long with Josh Allen, is even though he's a rookie and he's going to make mistakes and he's going to have inaccuracies, the things that he provides, those big playability, the cannon arm, making plays with his legs, I think he gives you a chance to win any game that he's in just because of the special playability that he has. And we saw it today. I think that his special playability really just kept this offense in the game because nobody else really stood out. Shady didn't have a great day. The run game couldn't really get going, but you get the 99 yards from Allen, changes everything, man. The running game looks great, on paper when you get that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that was, the offense had 0 turnovers. The defense created 2. We had a couple short fields. We had some decent punts. We had a couple fortunate bounces that we'll get to when we talk about special teams. That we downed the ball deep, and then got a short field back on our end. So it wasn't crazy long yards that we needed. So I think that there were some areas where maybe you would have seen more than the 327 yards we put up altogether, was because they had some short fields and didn't need it to that degree of what was there. But in a game like this, I know that we have some guys in the premium chat who get frustrated in why we see some of the dancing that McCoy did, but 46 yards, 50 total yards, plus another 20 kicked in from Chris Ivory, and 60 total yards out of those guys. That's what we needed tonight, and they provided it.
Yeah, the 2.7 per hurts, but I think we're seeing Shady not having confidence in his own vision. I think at times we're seeing nothing's there, and he tries to dance to make something happen. And throughout it, people can complain about it all they want, but throughout his career, it's worked more times than not. So I have a hard time getting on him about that because he has a long track record of dancing his way to 1,000-yard seasons. It's frustrating to watch when it's not going well. I give fans that, but the 2.7, you can't really have that, I don't think, and win consistently, because Josh Allen's not going to run for 100 yards probably again this year. He might have the 60, 70-yard games like Tyrod had. So I don't know that you can rely on that, but the overall, Shady, he had the plays he needed to make. He did just enough, and at the end of the day, they won, so it's not a problem. We're not probably going to talk about it all week, but something to keep an eye on moving forward.
Yeah, well, and don't kid yourself. The fact that Josh did run for 99 yards is also why Shady didn't need to run for more than 46, because we already got those yards. It's when he breaks off that big long run for 40 yards, that's 40 yards that we didn't need from McCoy, and then we're down there in the red zone. So I mean, there a piece of that is we ran the ball total for 167 yards, and yes, it would be a lot more normal for that to be 100 for McCoy and 40 for Josh Allen, or heck, 100 for McCoy and 40 for Ivory and 20 from Josh Allen. But it wasn't, and we got some nice long runs from Allen, and it's not going to be 13 run plays. That was specifically because of that zone coverage and the man looks that they got from the Jags, and they spread them out, and they knew where to hit them on a defense that is really aggressive in what they do, and it was called that way, and it probably won't be against the Dolphins. So
right.
It's something that was part of the play call, and again, why I was very pleased with Brian Daboll.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I'm happy right now with the offense as a whole, especially with I don't think that they'll be able to have that rating as the historically worst offense after these last 2 games. I think that they've kind of removed that monkey off their back.
Absolutely. So. All right, well, let's look at the defensive side of the ball, and it's really interesting. I know there's not a lot of stats that break it down or show things by quarter, but this was an incredible game where the Bills had phenomenal defense for 3 quarters, and then 1 quarter of NFL record-breaking worst defense. It was so crazy. They go 14-0 in the first quarter, nothing happening. Then the Jags ran the ball down their throats for like 160 of the 173 yards in the first half, just in the second quarter. 2 full drives and almost a third drive, and then pretty much bottled them up for nothing in the second half until they got that garbage stats drive at the end to put up some points on the final drive before the onside kicked. What were your thoughts on the defensive side of the ball?
Frustrating. It felt like the Saints game last year
for a minute,
a little bit, all over again. And those games, to me, like I said earlier on in this, are just very difficult to watch. The defense is good enough to not get run all over, and they just are. And it just feels like you can't stop it. I think that a little bit of the ability to bounce back again was the Jags losing Leonard Fournette, whether or not he obviously that was a dumb move by him to do that in a game where he was the hot hand. You can't do that, just walk away. Worked out for the Bills because I don't think that they had an answer for him. I don't even think if if he played the whole third quarter, I think that he would have kept going on them. They just looked like they didn't have an answer. Guys were bouncing off tackles. Jordan Poyer had him dead to rights and just whiffed on a tackle on a third down. It just didn't look good for the Bills. That second quarter, I got really scared, man, because they came out, they had momentum, and when a team can just punch you in the face right up the middle of your defense and gash you, it drains any type of momentum big plays can create, because they just get the ball back and they drain your defense down and they beat the life out of you. And that's really what we saw against New Orleans last year, and the Bills couldn't stop it. So I don't know if that is telling that there is a Achilles heel to this defense. If a team can draw up plays the way that these teams have had success against this style of defense. But it's something for, I think, everyone to keep an eye on. Is maybe, I know we brought in Starr to be that run stuffer, and we saw some plays, even though a penalty negated it on a big third down, Starr stuffed it, but we need more out of that to be able to stop the run once it gets going. It's fine if they do it for a drive, but for them to just repeatedly do it over and over again throughout that second quarter, just not good, man. It's a little bit of a warning sign to me that maybe this defense has some big improvements in the run game still.
Yeah, and I certainly had to kind of talk some people off the ledge in the premium Slack there for a moment, but the concern was rightful. It was horrible. It was unbelievably bad. In a combination of some missed arm tackles. You talked about the one for Poyer. Poyer had, Fournette for a 4-yard loss, let him spin out of it, which he's a big guy to be pulling spin moves, and he picked up 25 yards on that run. That's crazy to be able to go, for that length. And, just to put them in that position is something that we can't afford. Now, I will say, I think that we're building a modern defense where it's built on rotation and depth in the defensive line, then speed and coverage in the back seven. And that's what we have. We have 2 modern, fast linebackers. We have a bunch of really good corners and safeties, and then are in position to be able to do that. But it does make you susceptible to the old school running game, and that was kind of at risk there today. Now, for most teams, they can't line up with too tight and a fullback and punch us in the mouth like the Jaguars did. But when you build this modern defense like that, this is kind of a risk of that. And now, hopefully, like you said, bringing in guys like Starr and Phillips, and still having in Jordan Phillips and Harrison Phillips both, allows us to be able to do that. But it's certainly a risk, and I was very concerned with it. And I think the part that was comforting for me was the fact that we did see those second half adjustments. They did become more conscious of not over penetrating on defense. Like, penetration is key, but if you're going 4, 5, 6 yards and letting them push you past, you're not making a play at that depth. So I think that it was smart that they made some adjustments and were able to do that. And when you talked about that entire exchange and that play in the third quarter was one of the biggest momentum swings I've ever seen in any game in my life.
Yeah.
Being able to go from they threw what looked to be a touchdown, and we're going to go up 21-14. You then have a ridiculous scrap going back and forth. You have Shaq Lawson and Leonard Fournette literally throwing punches and getting into headlocks. They both rightfully got ejected, but I think every Bills fan would say, one of our 4 defensive ends for your best offensive player and who is destroying us, I'll take that trade. And it was honestly very fortunate, because if you're telling me that we were going to get out of 1st and goal at the 1 with Leonard Fournette still in that game, I'm going to guess that we don't hold them to no score and penalties backing up and them deciding to pass the ball and then turning into a missed field goal. All of those things happened and was a huge momentum swing. We take that missed field goal and immediately drive down the field and score the game winning touchdown ultimately. And being able to be in that position is just unbelievable to see that kind of transition take place. And it's a game of inches here and there, and that combination of events that took place of his butt touching down and not being a touchdown, and then being in position to hold them, get the missed field goal, turn around and score, you're not going to see a bigger momentum swing like that in any game.
Yeah, and I know there's people out there that don't believe in momentum, which is totally absurd to me. It's because they can't quantify it. I'm guessing.
Well, and I tried to clarify that for the person who was giving us a hard time in the Slack channel. Yes, if you want to say that momentum is this abstract magical thing that is out there influencing games and deciding things, you're right. There's not some magical third party involved called momentum. But what momentum is confidence and a lack thereof. And it is very real that players, when they think things are going well and you're on a roll or in the zone or any of those cliches you hear, and you think things are going well, it continues to go well. And the Bills have it all the time, that, oh God, here we go again feeling that takes place. That's momentum. When you see and you get things rolling and one team thinks, oh crap, here we go again, and the other team's like, yeah, no matter what, we're going to get this to happen, that is very real. And that confidence does translate from play to play and is what really does impact everyone from a play-to-play basis.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that we still have to have the conversation of whether or not it's real. There's 100 things that you cannot quantify in our daily lives that everybody just knows is real and exists. But when we talk about sports and momentum, it always comes into this conversation of, it's not real. I think it's crazy. I've seen it 1,000 times throughout all my sports watching. It's very real. In that one scenario, I always say, football games are decided by somewhere between 4 to 6 plays, and it all happened for this game in that area because it wiped out some of the big penalties. There were some monster penalties against the Bills that killed them, that they had turnovers that were overturned with flags and gave the Jaguars the ball back, and all those monster penalties immediately got wiped out with the shift in momentum and the way that play went down. And it's 100% real. I agree with you. I've never seen any momentum shift like that. The only thing I don't know that I maybe we could talk about it a little bit more. I still have the concern on the run game. I would, in an alternate world, alternate universe, I'd like to see if this defense would have been able to slow down Leonard Fournette, because the way they were running the ball, even though they would have been down at any point in that game, it was as effective and as gashing as a passing game, as a really good Tom Brady passing game was. That's how good he was in that second quarter of the game. And if they would have been able to keep this game in their control with Leonard Fournette, obviously it's great that he was ejected and the Bills were able to get the win, but there's still part of me that's wondering if they would have been able to make the adjustments to stop specifically him in the running game.
I think it's totally fair, and I'm a little bit glad we're not going to find out. But I will say so coming out in the second half, they got a quick 3 and out. I think it was on some questionable play calling. Then they got another one where they were almost off the field, got the stupid penalty, too many men on the field on a freaking 4th down punt, gave up a free first down, then stopped them again. That was with 2 straight runs to Fournette on that one, 4 carries total on that 6 plays. Then coming in, even the missed field goal, that was because they got the ball at the Bills 47 coming off of the punt that the Bills had out of their end zone, and then only picked up 23 yards, and that was with another penalty involved in the long play to Moncrief. So even on those 3 drives, I think I count Fournette had 8 touches for like 21 yards. So I will say in my mind, they had already started to make some adjustments and seemed to be heading the right direction. So I don't think it would have all of a sudden turned into, automatically Fournette gets 7, 8, 9 yards a touch. I think they had already curbed that a little bit, but obviously he was their best player today, and losing him for, the last 20 minutes of game time was huge.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it really made it so they didn't have to focus. I mean, you put the game in Blake Bortles' hands, I will take that 8 out of 10 times. If you have to put the game in his hands, I want that to happen 80% of the time. So definitely huge. I think it would have been interesting to see how it played out, because the game was close enough, like we said, at the end of that second half when they were almost running into field goal range in a 2-minute drill. I think the game was close enough where if you keep Fournette in that game, he's bound to make some plays and really bite you in the butt. But defensively, I liked what I saw. That run game concerns me, and later you get into the season, and I don't think that this is a playoff team, even though I do think, 2 in a row, I don't know, you get in the hunt, you never know. But,
settle down.
Just putting it out there for those fans. But no, if you are going to be that team that is competing late in the season, I know everybody drools over the Rams and drools over the Chiefs offense, but at the end of the day, when you get into the playoffs, the game slows down a little bit. Running really becomes a factor, and the teams that can stop the run and dominate on the run tend to do well in the playoffs. And Sean McDermott gets killed for saying we got to establish the line of scrimmage on both sides, and I think you saw in that second quarter, when you don't do that, things can get out of hand for your team.
Yeah, no, it was definitely interesting to see, and like I said, I think that it's kind of a risk of what we're building here, having that modern NFL defense with speed in different places. Milano's not a big guy, and there's a reason that he's great in coverage and good when he gets a running start and is chasing guys down in the run game. But when they're coming right at him, I'm sure the guards love to get a hold of a guy who's 230 pounds tops. So it's something that I think is there. And we have a couple questions going in the chat. Kyle Newey had asked, do you like the emotion from Shaq after the fight? And I will say I was probably torn. I'd prefer that a guy keeps his cool, but what I loved was that McDermott loved it, and you could tell in anybody who watched the post-game presser, he was not only endorsing it, I think he was happy about it, and that he said that was him coming to the defense of one of his teammates, and that, we got to be smart and not take penalties, but I'm never going to be upset about a guy defending one of his teammates. I think it was Joe B who followed up with a question saying, is there going to be any discipline for Shaq? And, McDermott literally chuckled and kind of laughed and said, no, we're, we felt like he was doing what was right to take care of his family. And, we're going to try to be smart, not put ourselves into a bad position like that. But anytime somebody, comes out there and puts one of our guys at risk, I want guys who are going to go out there and defend our family and be there for us. So it was kind of awesome to see that. I think McDermott liked that it fired everybody up, and that he was right there in the thick of it with them.
Yeah, we talked about this, I think, a lot this summer. Football is an emotional game. It is a very physical game, and I have no issues with how that went down as far as what Shaq Lawson's involvement was in that play. I think I'm totally fine with it. What happened in the concourse, man, you get hot. Your livelihood's on the line. It's your family. You work with these guys every day. You fought with these guys all year, and you're gonna get heated, man. I have no problem with what he did. I think the only problem I have, and I can't confirm it, is I did see on Twitter that maybe a Bills fan took a swing at Leonard Fournette. I have a big problem there if that's true. Fans should stay out of that, even if fights get going and things get going. We don't need to get involved as fans. So I'm hoping that is not true. We've got a lot of black eyes as Bills fans from in-game experiences as is. We don't need more. But as far as what Shaq did, I 100% endorse it. I tweeted out, let's re-sign him immediately for a long-term deal. Get him back on the books, man, because you want guys like that you're going to go into battle. And if you're going to go into battle, you want guys that have your back. And I think everybody on that defense right now knows that Shaq Lawson is 100% bought into the team and has every one of those guys' backs.
Yeah, let's not kid ourselves. Jerry Hughes has been that guy for 5 years. It's something that, I don't mind a guy playing to the echo of the whistle and, being there for a little bit extra and really pushing it. It's why people like Wyatt Teller already. It's what people loved about Richie Incognito. We want them to play under control and within the parameters of the rules, but right up to the edge of that. And obviously, Shaq was there. And then when you add in the, coming to the defense of one of your guys who's getting attacked by other people, I'm always going to support that. So I thought it was great to see and something that I'm totally on board with.
Yeah, and Nick Lowe also has a question in there, and it's something we've kind of talked about a little bit, and I think this is always a good argument as to where it comes from. But speaking of penalties, are we really that undisciplined? Seems like we give up a lot of crucial downs. This is something that I've had conversations with, and I don't really know where I stand, right? Because it's almost nature versus nurture in a sense of like, can you coach out these things from guys? We saw it with Rex Ryan. Remember, the guys were running laps at practice for penalties. It still didn't fix it. How much can you coach and discipline guys into not committing penalties versus it just is what it is?
I think it's a fine line. I think some of it comes with talent. I think the better you are, the more you're able to kind of control your body and yourself to be able to do the right things and be able to be in position. A couple of the lineup things we had, Lafayette Pitts went out early in this game. He is in every single special teams unit. So then all of a sudden when we saw the penalty on the punt return unit where there were too many guys on the field, it was two guys both thinking they were going in as the substitute who weren't normally in the game. So anytime you get into positions like that, that's something that, I guess ultimately that's on coaching, that you're talking to the right guys, but that's a thing that's putting you at risk of something that could be a tough play and more opportunity for those kind of things. But playing, the penalties that come up during the game, there was some ticky-tack stuff that, what do I want Russell Bodine to do blocking Calais Campbell? Hey, you can't do everything possible to keep him away from Josh Allen. The one play that was there that he absolutely got by him and was probably going to get a sack. And I think John Miller tackled him and took him to the ground. And it was kind of, he didn't really hold per se, but he tackled him. He had his arm around the front and wrapped all the way around the back and rode him to the ground. And if he didn't do that, Calais Campbell would have eaten Josh Allen alive. I'm totally fine taking that penalty.
Yeah, and a lot of times in the NFL, that doesn't get called. You see it and doesn't get called. So it's a lot. There's penalties to be called on every play. These refs in particular called very ticky-tacky, too tight, I think. A lot of that stuff probably would have gotten away with another crew. I don't know. Throughout the entirety of the drought and the number of regimes that the Bills had, and they've had disciplinarians and guys that I always, listen into Chris Brown and the old Bills videos in the early 2000s talking about what the coach was doing to work on penalties. And at the end of the day, I think it all basically works out to being the same. I've never seen a big difference in a big disciplinarian coming in and really changing that for the Bills. I think, like you said, it comes down to talent. When you look at some of the better teams, they tend to not commit penalties. I know we all joke around about the Patriots and how the league loves the Patriots, but you see them come out and execute, and it's just not acceptable. And it's also a lot of talent. So better teams I don't think commit as much.
Yeah. I don't think there's a perfect answer for it. And again, anything that's an effort penalty, I'm never going to have a problem with. There's some things from, pre-snap things, jumping off sides, false starts. That's discipline and just having your head in the game. But, in play penalties that happen because you're trying hard, it's hard to get upset about those.
Yeah, the ones that really bother me are the lazy penalties, like defenders holding when they don't have to. I think there was one on Taron Johnson who I've been thrilled with throughout this year. I don't think that he needed to hold on that play. That did end up resulting in a first down, even though it was just a 5-yard penalty and kept them on the field. It's those types of plays. We saw another one from Eddie Yarbrough on a screen pass. When you get a holding call on a screen pass, man, that just kills me. You don't need it. They didn't need it in that moment. It seems like it's I watch a lot of basketball, and when you see a guy get burned and he comes around the back of a defender to try to poke the ball out, it's a lazy play, and you should get called for it every time. Those penalties drive me nuts, and I think that can be coached out of guys.
Yeah, and Kyle had another question here, kind of in the same thing we're talking about with discipline and passion. Do you like the talking after the game? Some of the Instagram videos, Shaq and Jordan had a couple. My response to him was, it's honestly probably not my favorite thing. I don't like the idea of bulletin board material, but I don't care. And if it's what gets the team fired up and they like to be able to play with a chip and an edginess, and we know that McDermott preaches that kind of underdog, chip on the shoulder mentality, if that's kind of what that breeds, then bring it on. I'm fine with that.
Two things. I like it more when it's my favorite team versus other teams. I'm not gonna lie, there's a bias in there for me, but I also like it better post game versus pregame. Like I said, I don't like the bulletin board stuff. I don't want my team out there talking trash to the team before a game and getting them going. But you know what? If you win and another team has been talking trash, or they're out there jabbing their mouths and talking trash, I don't mind coming out after the game and talking a little bit. Do I want the players doing it? No. I don't want anybody getting on Instagram and talking trash, but I get it, and I'd rather it be post game than beforehand, before the whistle's even blown, and you give a guy a reason. Again, back to the momentum conversation, or a chip on your shoulder, those cliches. I don't want to give anybody anything coming into the game to get them even more amped up to play. So post game, I don't mind as much.
Yeah, I know it's kind of tough to take a lot of nuanced defensive analysis when you're playing Blake Bortles, but anything else you want to talk about on the defensive side?
I thought Tremaine Edmonds, even though we didn't hear his name a lot, and obviously that second quarter wasn't good for anybody on the defense, I thought he did a pretty good job moving around, seeing things. It didn't seem like he got beat too much. I think that he's, we've talked about a lot, especially with the quarterback position and development and it not being a linear thing, but I think he's had a pretty good path up, trending up throughout the year. You don't see him make a lot of the same mistakes twice. There's definitely a ton about his game that needs to get cleaned up and you'd like to see him improve on. But for a 20-year-old kid, man, the kid just continues to impress me, and he's trending up almost every game for me.
I agree. I think I was really pleased with his progression, specifically in coverage. And again, it's Blake Bortles, so there's probably not a ton to take away here. But the fact that they are in a position where he's able to make those plays, where he's not getting, being isolated in those, crossing routes and things like that, I think it's great. And I think his development, speaks to it. And obviously his running mate, Matt Milano, continues with just a ridiculous, Pro Bowl effort, another interception here. I think that's his 6th turnover on the year. I think he's now got 3 interceptions and 3 fumbles. It's just ridiculous, or 4 and 2. I don't remember which it is. But just an unbelievable effort that I think that we should be really pleased with the development of the young pieces. I saw a lot of flashes again from Jordan Phillips, a couple nice flash plays from Star Latuile. Again, the beleaguered contract of Star Latuile, and just some of the things that I think are coming together here. So many pieces that are going to be there in the future. Important reps for Levi Wallace. I think Levi Wallace has a shot to be that, hopefully 4th corner next year. We sign or bring in a new cornerback 2, but with Taron Johnson locked in at the nickel, and Tre'Davious is the number 1, who again, his video behind the ref tonight was just phenomenal. If anyone hasn't seen it, just go online and type in Trey White ref, and he's dancing behind the referee. Is absolutely hysterical. But Levi Wallace looks like he could be a piece in the future and maybe lock down that 4th cornerback spot to be there for depth when we bring in our new CB2.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it, and I really try hard not to sound like a Homer fan, even though I'm constantly accused of it on the Twitter.com site. But you look at all these pieces and these undrafted guys, and I'm not saying that these guys are going to be starters and all-pro players or anything like that, but if you can find those guys that can continue to stay on your 53-man roster and be a 4th cornerback or whatever it is, I think that really goes to show you that there's some really good scouts in this front office. It's not just Brandon Beane, but the area scouts, the guys underneath Beane, Schoon, guys like that this is a really nice front office, and they're finding guys, and it doesn't have to be big trades or big free agent signings to build a team with nice depth, and it's something that you need. Obviously, at some point, they have to hit on the top end of the talent across the board at certain positions. I think they'll get there, but we're talking about Levi Wallace, Robert Foster, some of these guys, Taron Johnson, a 5th-round pick, Matt Milano, a 5th-round pick. Like they're getting a lot out of places that not every team gets a lot out of.
Yeah, well, I mean, one, Eddie Yarborough has been really nice. I know we joke a lot about what Nick O'Leary was or wasn't, but he was a contributor for a little while there. And now this year, you're seeing Jason Kroom is another one. You're seeing it from Levi Wallace. You're seeing it from Robert Foster. What a lot of people don't realize is when a team brings in an undrafted free agent and he's on your roster and locked in, you get what's called exclusive rights free agency to him. And it's basically the idea that you would get the same window of time you would if they were a 7th round draft pick. So you get their rights at basically a veteran minimum deal for up to 4 years. And it's really incredible contract control that it doesn't have to be some all-pro contribution. But if all of a sudden Eddie Yarborough is your 4th defensive end, you need a 4th defensive end.
Yeah, you just throw on the... Yep.
Yeah, it's nice when you can contribute. If Levi Wallace can be your 4th corner, that's nice. If you can have Jason Kroom be your backup tight end next year, that's great. If Robert Foster can be your wide receiver 4, that's great. All of a sudden, that's 4, 5, 6 guys who are there, who are veterans, who know the system, who have been there year after year, and are doing it at a rock bottom contract control financial pace, and that gives you more money to go out and get other players at other positions. So it really has a cascading effect that's really helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and I think it's a testament to the front office.
I agree completely. So now as we move in to our final phase, I heard a rumor that Danny Crossman is your favorite position coach on the Bills. Is that true?
Well, before I address Danny Crossman, I'm surprised that we're talking about special teams without Bajorquez playing anymore on this show. I figured that conversation would die down with him going on IR. No, look, honestly, I hate to talk about special teams. I think everybody that follows me knows that I hate to have conversations about special teams. And I hate getting on the special teams coach, but it's getting out of control with Danny Crossman, and we just talked about it with the penalties. I think if you can point at one coach throughout the Bills' history that it feels like penalties are on that guy, either he's the most unlucky special teams coach in the world and just guys are just letting him down, or he just doesn't have these guys coached up right. The guy running off the field today, I mean, I haven't really gotten mad this season because my expectations were pretty low, but I was almost cussing in front of my toddler as I saw that guy running off the field today, knowing that was about to give up a really impressive play by Star Lotulelei on that play before that and continuing the Jaguars drive. And your special teams cannot shoot you in the foot like that. I know they say it's a 3-phase game, but really the only thing I need out of my special teams is to not get in the way. They don't have to play phenomenally. I just want good to average special teams, but do not get in the way. Do not step on our own toes. And this under Danny Crossman, this unit continues almost on a weekly basis to really make things difficult for the whole team.
And it's just frustrating in multiple directions. I know that, I brought it up here, and Isaiah McKenzie has breathed a little bit of life into our return game, but he's still not being given any space to do anything. But we gave up multiple nice returns. D.D. Westbrook got a 21-yard punt return against us. So it's just something that I think, we're seeing great kicking from Steven Hauschka, but I don't think Crossman taught Hauschka how to kick. He was
great before he got here.
He was plenty good before he got here. Bajorquez was doing a great job, and I know, he was a rookie. He had some ugly moments. Obviously, the hold, that he botched, and some of the, not being able to get the snap on the one that went behind him. There were some things that were, pretty poor. But as far as the kicking went, his biggest difference between him and Colton Schmidt is Bajorquez had fantastic hang time and loft on the ball with still getting yardage. So Colton Schmidt can only get yardage when he kind of points the ball and it rockets there, but that gets there before the coverage units have time to get there. And we got lucky on one where there was a terrible fair catch by the guy for the Jags, and he gave up probably a 20-yard return because there was no one near him. And then 2 other punts were really bad by Schmidt, but had a really nice bounce and bounced their way down to be pinned down within the 5. So it ended up looking pretty good that he had 2 inside the 20, but I think they both bounced more than 20 yards to get to that point. So it's just frustrating that I think there's very little benefit coming from the coaching. I think any of the positive has been literally from Hauschka or Bajorquez's leg. And then anything else, we've had almost no positive returns. I think I count 1 on the season that I can remember. Maybe a second one for Micah Hyde. But there's not any consistent space. We give up a fair amount of decent returns, so it's not like our coverage schemes are fantastic. And we constantly have penalties, and some of that has to rest at the foot of the coaches. So I certainly hope that we see a change there. I thought he was an interesting holdover from Ryan and from previous staffs. I think he even survived prior to that and was there with with Marrone, so he's got some kind of longevity going on. But I just thought that overall the special teams was a net negative today, and that's disappointing to have that happen more often than not.
Yeah, and if Marrone is the guy that he says he is, which I do believe, I don't think it's just coach speak and the things that he says, but I think this is one of those instances. If the things that he says he truly believes, then I really can't see a way that he keeps Danny Crossman, because that standard that McDermott has talked about all throughout this season and setting that standard, Crossman literally flies in the face of that, and the standard isn't there, and all that is there is inconsistency, and like you said, it's bad across the board. Penalties, coverage units, and the players aren't bad players. There's good special teams players on this team. I mean, Lorenzo Alexander was a Pro Bowl special teams player. They have guys on this team that can play teams. So I just don't know that Danny Crossman deserves to keep his job, and I'll be interested to see what Sean McDermott has to do here going into the offseason. I don't think they make a change during the season, but something has to be done, in my opinion, at the exit interviews here this season.
Well, I mean, you saw it last year. I mean, he fired Rico coming off of last year out of the offensive coordinator, and now you get into this offseason. I do think that we see a couple changes. I don't think we see anything at the top. My biggest concern is that Joe Shane is going to get lost to a GM job, because I think he's a great assistant GM. But I think as far as Bean, Shane, McDermott, Frazier, and Dable, I don't see any of those top 5 positions changing. I do think we'll see a little bit from the position coach standpoint, and that hopefully Dable gets a little flexibility to bring in some of his guys from an offensive standpoint, with McDermott's stamp of approval, and I hope that Crossman is one of those. I'd like to see a new voice, and I know we talked about it today, and Eric chimed in on it as well and kind of supported this idea I had put out there. Was one of the things people don't realize, that the reason we're struggling with the $55 million in dead cap, that's a huge hit on the depth of the team, and the depth of the team is the special teams. Your bottom third of the roster is your special teams. That's your, extra corner, your extra safety, your extra receiver, your extra tight end. All those guys that we can't afford to sign the little bit better players means that we're having lesser players have to contribute on special teams. I'd like to be able to give that a shot with some top-notch, higher-level players, but also with a new coach and a new vision. So I hope that we do get to see that, and I know Kyle would ask specifically about Isaiah McKenzie. I hope that he's a piece of our future as well. He's someone that I think has brought a spark, and that if we can get, some better structure to our return setup, I think he's the kind of player that could really give us a little bit extra, and you see them trying to incorporate him on the offensive side of the ball. He's everything the team thought they were drafting in Ray McLeod. They're showing their hand with those 2 attempts. They think they need that guy that's the jet sweeps, bubble screens, punt return, kick return. They want that guy as your 4th, 5th receiver. I think that they're showing that, and that he's certainly shown today with only being on the roster for 10 days, and already Ray McLeod was inactive, and he's now got 4 touches each game. He clearly is a part of their future plans.
Yes, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with Ray, because he kind of takes that role away from Ray, and that's a good problem to have, that you have to maybe get rid of a guy that you drafted because a guy that you pulled off the street is doing better. So I'm very interested to see there, and I got to say, you called it. So you called that one as a good pickup for the Bills, and he has been. So I'll hand you that good one.
Nice. No, I knew that they were excited only because they tried to pick him up 3 different times, and being able to, be in that position and now come in and contribute. I think it's been, really exciting to see that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we go to kind of wrap things up here for the day, let's get our final takeaways and final thoughts on the game, and what you look for what this means to you in the future going forward. So I'll let you give your final thoughts here.
Yeah, I think, man, if we could just manage to win out and no,
I will say, I'm sitting here, I'm watching Sunday Night Football in the background and Football Night in America while we're taping this. When I swear to everything holy, when they showed the In the Hunt, they had the Bills listed, and they really were on the screen. So we're not going to go and win our last 7 games straight, But it is kind of fun that they were at least on the screen.
No, they're not. But what I do think that this showed me in the last two games showed me is I don't think that the team that had historic bad offense and blown out in games. Obviously, that was tough to watch, but I think they're going to be competitive here throughout the rest of the year. I think that they can pretty much play with every team that they're going up against. There's going to be some ugly stuff, but I think that this team is going to come out and compete. I think any of the heat that Sean McDermott had on him through Vegas or any of that betting, I think that was totally out of control. And I think you see that in the way that they're competing as a 3-7 team going into this game. And they're coming out competing is a testament to Sean McDermott. And I think you're going to see this team competitive in all the games remaining. And I think that for Bills fans, that's all I really need for the rest of the year is to see some good competitive games and guys continue to develop. We've talked about it all year long. Development is much more fun to watch when your team's actually competing in the game and you can see what they're doing. So that's really all I'm looking forward to going into the rest of the year. And we got some fun division games coming up. So that's always fun. Even if you're a 1-2 win team, it's fun to play against those division rivals.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of exciting things coming. And, I feel the same way. The final 6 games to me is 95% what is Josh Allen. And that if today is any indication that coming off the rust of missing 4 games, playing against the toughest defense he's going to face all year, and he gave us this kind of game, I am legitimately optimistic about the future. And that if this is what we can expect is this kind of, gamesmanship. And I love the fact that he's jawing and talking trash on the field and out there, plays with a ton of emotion. I see a lot of Phillip Rivers and Brett Favre in the way that he plays that way emotionally. Hopefully he one day gets to the point of the throwing part of the game. But from an emotional standpoint, I love it. And I think it's fantastic to see him in there. And that's what I want these last 5 games is just him staying healthy and a chance to watch him continue to fight and contribute and develop and to show hope for the future, because that hope is what's going to be selling free agents to come here. They're going to talk to guys like LaShawn McCoy and Micah Hyde, who were well-established veterans before they got here. But really the sales pitch is going to be, do they want to come hitch their wagon to Josh Allen? And I'll say after a game like today, I think that sales pitch gets a little bit easier. And I think that makes it a little bit better. We're going to have a ton of money. We're going to have a lot of nice draft picks. We're going to be able to bring in some talent no matter what. But part of that is going to be, especially for the skill position guys and that free agent tight end, that free agent lineman, that free agent wide receiver, do they want to come hitch their wagon to Josh Allen? And I want to see him put up 5 more games like this or better, and maybe some, I wouldn't mind some fancier passing stats on a couple of the lesser defenses. But if he continues with this kind of trajectory, you talked about it before, development is not a linear step-by-step improvement. There's going to be some bumps. So we're probably going to see an ugly game in this final stretch here. But if we see an overall, sustained improvement from a relative scale, and that you see some steady steps forward and more of these aggressive throws downfield. Again, he took no sacks, and like you said, he probably had a huge hand in that, not just the offensive line. And he had no turnovers, no fumbles, no interceptions. That kind of game where he's taking, he by far led the NFL this week in air yards per attempt. I think it was 18.3, and the second highest was 16. So he's throwing the ball deep and taking shots over and over and over again and not turning it over. That's what I want to see going forward, and that's where I want to be able to take my final stretch of the season away from.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
All right. I know we had talked about it here, and excited to be able to do a giveaway. So we do have a giveaway for today, and one of our dedicated listeners here, Kyle Newey, congratulations. You're our first winner of our Cover1 swag giveaway here. So excited to get some information there, and please take this as a opportunity and invitation for everybody that's listening. Jump online with us live, be able to come in. It's great having questions. We've got a handful of guys in there now and hit some really nice back and forth. It helps give Aaron and I some ideas beyond what we're talking about of what you guys want to hear and what you think fans are going to be looking for and what questions you want to have asked. And that's exactly what they want. Take that a step further. Go on to iTunes, go on to Spreaker, give us a review, give us a like and a subscription, be able to go in and know when we're going live so you can jump on and do that. And the ratings and reviews give us a lot of help to be able to bring this to other people. We want to continue to do this for you guys, and that helps us put that together. And one final request, come on over to cover1.net, join as a premium member. We have a ton of fantastic things going on, great coverage, great quality content. Eric has the best film breakdowns in the business. That's why The Athletic uses his stuff. We have fantastic conversations in the premium Slack channel. We have a lot of exciting articles going up, great draft coverage. We have an entire team going down to the Senior Bowl. It's going to be really awesome stuff to be able to take a look at, and we'd love to have you guys come over and take a look with us and join in the conversation. As we close things out, Aaron, anything to leave the people with?
Thank you so much. We can't do it without you guys. And if you are interested in being entertained on Twitter, I urge you to come follow me at Aaron Quinn 716. I do some of the graphic stuff here for Cover1, hoping to do a little bit more of that. My life's been a little out of control with the toddler and the recent addition of an infant, but hoping to kind of settle back in here throughout the holiday season, get back into the graphics, and join my good friend Greg here more often. So come find me again, Aaron Quinn 716. I love to interact with everyone and get going on Twitter. I like to think I'm a good follow, but I'll leave that up to you.
The same way, you can find me on Twitter at Greg Tomsett, GregTompsett. Have a lot of fun. Love to follow back Bills fans, and really enjoy. So we're able to, kind of get things together and have a lot of fun, talk about the game. So come over and find us, and we'll do everything we can to pull this together. All right. Well, thank you guys for everything tonight. Obviously, a lot more fun to do these after a Bills win. And we will look to talk to you guys as we preview the Dolphins game on Wednesday night. But for Greg and for Aaron, closing things out here, thanks for listening to Cover1 Buffalo, and we'll talk to you soon.